Once upon a time, there was a couple, a man and a woman. They grew up together and they did everything together. But when they finished college, they found no prospects, no jobs to be had, and only a mountain of debt. Try as they might, neither could get work for very long. Neither of them could make up enough for very much. So, they did what any rational couple would do. They sought the help of a satanic being. Traveling deep into the bowels of the halls of time, the woman came back with a book. A book with letters that screamed and ink that was bright as blood. In this book, this woman found a spell, one to summon a demon that she believed could fix all of their problems. So, with her boyfriend's help, they began to summon it. They created a fire by burning trees he's brought from a monk's graveyard. They lit it with ashes taken from a holy forest. And finally, for kindling, they took 2 slips of paper, written with the man's name and with the woman's name. By offering it to the pyre, the demon appeared. First, it appeared in the smoke, too dim to see, almost something you could imagine. And then, the demon was first a shadow in the smoke, little visible, and very hard to see. One could almost imagine he was imaginary. But then, as the man and the woman chanted his name again, he appeared a little more full. This time he appeared red in the mist, looking almost like a drop of blood dancing in water. Then finally, by chanting his name one final time, the demon took solid shape. In that moment, he was as real as any of them, and the smoke around him was his own aura, simply bellowing away from his body, and the fire merely smoldered in his fur. "What do you desire?" he asked the couple. In that moment, they both agreed on the same thing and spoke at the same time. "We want wealth." The demon nodded and opened its mouth. His teeth were large and strong, and within his mouth a green glow could be seen. "You will have your wealth, but I will have your firstborn child. I will take them on their 5th birthday, and in exchange your wealth will never empty." And once then, the demon once again faded into the smoke, and the fire became dim embers. The only thing left of her dark ritual was a single burnt paper with the names forever burned away. That day, the man and the woman were so happy. Their money in their account never emptied. No matter how much they took out of it, it was always there, and it was always plentiful. As time went on, though, they got married, and they agreed to never have children. They thought they could outsmart the demon this way by simply never having children. But in time, 1 year after they married, and 3 years after summoning the demon, the woman got pregnant. They don't know how. They thought they protected against it, but she was pregnant. Now, fearing the demon's wrath if they dared disobeyed, they decided to have the child. Once the child was born, they named her Flora. Once she was brought home, they raised her, of sorts. They had a nanny for her, or a rotating series of nannies. No one to stay with her too long to get too attached, and a constant reminder for the parents never to get too close. As the girl grew older and bigger and stronger, they didn't pay attention to her. She would often try to call out to her mom and dad, but they would never come. When she had nightmares at night, the parents refused to let the nanny in to even comfort her. "It's for the best," they would tell the nanny. "Always careful to keep their distance. Always careful never to get close." But as time went on, the girl's 5th birthday approached. For the first time in the little girl's life, the parents celebrated her birthday. Well, not with her, but they celebrated. They drank the finest wines, and they ate the finest meats, and they slurped the finest caviar. While that night, the nanny took care of the little girl, and she went out of her way, even bought a little cake for the girl, just so she wouldn't be alone. But as the parents partied all night, and midnight came, and the girl was 5. But then, the next day, when the parents returned, hungover and happy, they found the little girl was still there, and so was the nanny. Flora's head resting on the nanny's lap as they both slept. They shrugged at first, thinking maybe there's something about the deal they didn't understand. But they figured the demon would come for her soon enough. So, they kept on ignoring little Flora, and they kept on living their lives to their fullest, thinking they had everything. But things began to go wrong. For years of their life, their house was always full of the greatest of foods and the finest of drinks. Wines that would make even a French king blush. And yet, it was never good. They would bring home wine and then store it, and then merely a month later it would be sour and undrinkable. They would order the finest of steaks, cooked in the best of ways, and when they ate it, they could taste nothing but the stingy meat. And yet, Flora's meals were always filling. Her plate never seemed to run empty, and she always had what she desired. Out of jealousy, then, her father decided to break her plates, and force her to eat directly off the table. This made Flora very unhappy, but it eased her father's pain, only a little. Her mother used to go out and buy the finest of beauty products, always making herself feel as beautiful as can be, and always making herself great as can be. She wouldn't spend entire weeks on salons, spending entire days with her makeup, and only being made up and then washed down by the finest of artists. But then, nothing ever looked right. Every reflection seemed to sneer at her. Every line on her face only seemed to droop. In time, she grew angrier and angrier, and decided to cover every mirror in her house, refusing to even look at herself. But Flora was always happy, and she never seemed to worry about how she looked. She was just happy to go out and have fun when she could with her nanny. But in anger, her mother decided to take away all of Flora's nice clothes and give her only the cheapest of rags, just enough to cover herself, but not enough that she could be comfortable. This made the mother feel a little better, but not enough. And as their situation grew worse and worse, every bite of food the parents brought into the house seemed to rot on their very plates before they could even eat it. Every piece of clothing they brought in seemed to be rotting before they could even wear it. And everything they did for happiness, their movies, their hunting, the people they were with, their cars, and so much more, none of it brought them any happiness anymore. It always felt like there was something just a little off about it that made it so much worse. One day then, her parents decided to get back at Flora the only way they knew how. They fired her nanny, then refused to hire anyone else. But the next day, the nanny returned. And every time they tried to fire her, she only laughed and kept working. She would take Flora out to the park. She would take her out to the movies. She would take her to go get food. She would go out and buy them nice clothes. And her parents could never figure out why. They never figured out why the nanny never left. And all they knew that she stayed. Finally, a year after this all began, on Flora's 6th birthday, the demon returned. The parents at this time were desperate. They snuck into Flora's room, her father wielding a blade that he was told was holy, and her mother carried a satchel of holy water. They wanted to drown her and then cut out her heart, thinking that would appease the demon and give them what they wanted. As they approached, something changed. Every step they took closer, things got quieter. The crickets outside no longer spoke. The wiring in the building no longer buzzed. And finally, when they got close, it sounded like even their very breaths were stolen from their lungs. In that single moment, when they saw their sleeping daughter, the father lifted his blade, and then the mother sprinkled her water, and when they were both satisfied that it was done, the father brought down his blade. Instead of it striking their daughter, it struck only into the mattress. Where the daughter once was only a dim shadow in her shape. And looming over the bed was the demon they saw so long ago. And if what they saw last time was a nightmare, then what they saw now was a night terror. The demon was growling. His teeth were open, and this was no smile. Reaching out with his large fists, big enough to crush a human skull, he grabbed the blade and he grabbed the satchel, both leaving burns in his skin as he pulled them away from the parents. "You dare strike at your own daughter? You had everything and you brought her nothing but harm. I should kill you for this." Hearing the demon's words, the parents wept, throwing themselves on the ground, begging him not to kill them. "We'll give you anything. We'll give you our child. We'll give you our wealth. Anything. Just spare us." The demon only scoffed. "You already gave me everything, and you already gave me her. But I will take one last thing away from you." As the demon parted, leaving only the smell of sulfur and his final lingering words in Flora's room. "I'm taking away my protection of you." Once that was done, Flora was gone, and so was the tutor. And at first, the parents were relieved, thinking they still got away with it somehow. But things kept getting worse. No matter what food or drink they drank, it all tasted poisonous and foul. Even water, plain water with nothing in it, made them feel unsafe and unclean. They couldn't wear any clothing because it always mismatched, and it only got worse from there. Now, suddenly, the couple's endless immunity to the law expired. Now, all of a sudden, they were followed by tax revenue. They were followed by those investigating fraud. And of course, the imperial government wanted to figure out where the money came from. After all, someone doesn't just show up with unlimited money out of somewhere. And they could never explain it themselves. Have you ever tried explaining to a court that a demon gave you all your money? I didn't think so. Well, they tried explaining that to the court, and that only made things worse for them. Finally taken to court, their assets frozen, and removed from all the joys of their life, the couple were asked a very simple question by the judge, one they could never answer. What are your names? When they offered their names to summon the demon so many years ago, the demon took it away with it, and they never noticed. Well, when you had all the money in the world, it didn't seem very important. But now, unable to defend themselves, they were taken to prison, where their curse continued to follow them. Even the terrible food in Withering Heights was even worse. Even water brought them no joy. The sun seemed only cold, and the water always freezing, no matter how hot it was, and their uniforms always the wrong size. So, the couple would wither in Withering Heights, while the demon Faunus took his new daughter, Flora, away. Where they were taken? I'm not sure. Some say they went to a private place in River City, where they worked together as a bouncer for a bar. Some say that they collect special items from people, collecting them for an unknown reason, possibly sinister, or possibly not. But the most disturbing thing I've ever heard is that Flora was never real to begin with, only a shadow of the demon that he used to tempt and haunt the parents. But regardless of where they are now, the point remains. They lost their deal with Faunus, and they lost far more than they could ever have gained.